welcome back to The Short Game, a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and I'm joined this week by two fine co-hosts.
Laura Nash.
And Shane Kelly.
And this week we are talking about frogs.
And climbing, which is really fun for me after I watched, roughly 10 hours of bouldering, lead, and speed climbing from the Olympics. I was very excited to not actually have to leave my house to do some of it for myself.
Wait, You watched 10 hours of climbing? That's not an event that even occurred to me to watch. Tell me about why is that interesting?
No, it's so interesting. So, okay, sorry for everyone here who wants a video game review, but honestly, some of the best Olympics I watched was the bouldering and lead. So the idea is, if you watch the qualifications, the first person who goes is the least ranked on the wall, and they have 4 different what they call problems, which are sets of rock climbing walls for them to climb that test different skills. And the first person to do it cannot get on the goddamn wall at all. They just can't even. They're just falling off the wall for 5 minutes. And by the end, when the last person does it, they go to the top in 20 seconds. It is the combination of someone can blind read a rock climbing wall. It is very cool to watch someone do something that, monkey men and monkey women just climb the wall.
Do the people who go later get to watch the other people struggle first?
No, it's blind.
Okay,
so
I
qualifications, it's 5 minutes blind, and then the finals, which is everyone's qualified. Everyone looks at the wall for 2 minutes, and then you have 2 minutes to climb it. So it's slightly different in the 2 rounds. But no, the first time you see the wall, you have to climb it, and the best people at it look at the wall for 10 seconds and just whoop, go to the top. It is so much clearer, the difference between the normal people and the not. And the people who didn't even get on the wall are still winning awards worldwide. It's just the wall is that hard. And it is so cool to watch.
So what country is ace rock climbing of the world?
Japan has one of the best. I mean, he won silver, but he was the most impressive person. And I think in the women's side, there's a woman from Slovenia who also got silver, who was the most impressive. She just didn't get the cool thing is the bouldering happens first, and then it is literally how high up a wall they get in 5 minutes.
Wow.
And if they get to the top, they get 100 points. So towards the end, it's they go 2 more rocks and they get a gold medal, and they fall on the second rock and everyone gasps. It is so suspenseful. It is literally, can a human hang on to a rock getting to the top? It is
wow.
I would definitely, if you can still replay it, go watch bouldering. I'm sure it's on somewhere, but the commentator is very good because I think she's a professional rock climber who was injured, so she would have been doing it so she knows everything they do. It is, honestly, Jess and I were enthralled, and we were supposed to go to bed, and we stayed up till 2 a.m. on a work night watching the bouldering lead because it got
really
so good. Yeah,
I might go back and check that out because I got that Peacock subscription just to watch the Olympics, and we discussed this, Laura. The whole plan was I was going to get Peacock. I was going to cancel it as soon as I could, and just watch the Olympics. And then when I went to cancel, they were like, "Hey, but wouldn't you really like to keep it for just $2 a month for the next 6 months?" And I was like, sure. And
you can watch the Paralympics. It'll be great.
Yeah. And we're watching some crummy, they've actually got a somewhat decent selection of crummy horror movies. So we're going through some of that stuff. So I've still got access.
To watch Poker Face. That's on there.
Poker Face is incredible.
Yeah.
What's Poker Face? I don't think I know that one.
Poker Face. So it's got Natasha Leggero, who's fantastic. And it's basically her doing... Sorry, what's the name
Columbo.
of that? Columbo. Yes, it's her doing Columbo.
She has the power of detecting not just if someone's lying. She doesn't know what the actual truth is. She just knows if you're lying.
Yeah, she's a human lie detector and investigator. So
they're all written and directed by Ryan Johnson, who did the Knives Out movies.
Okay.
Mwah.
All right. Yeah. All right. I'll check that out. That sounds really fun. And then we've just been getting farther and farther, farther. We just skipped right to the making me happy section at the end of the show. Yeah. We started out well there. We're like, oh yeah, climbing game. Let's talk about climbing. Here we are talking about Columbo Girl. So we're talking this week about Valley Peaks, a game about climbing. Back to that topic. And this is a game that came out a few weeks ago, I think. Let's check. July 24th. That's pretty new. So it's a pretty new game. But it's apparently been in development quite a long time. There've been like demos and so on, previews. So a lot of folks in our community recommended this to us. So thank you to the folks that did. I was really glad that we played this. It looks like one of your, cozy games, right? It's about frogs. All the characters are little froggy guys, frog heads, big froggy frog eyes. It's got this interesting color scheme that is kind of like pastel autumn kind of vibes to it. And also the arms, we'll talk about them in a minute, really goofy. It's got a really goofy, cute look to it, which is why I was absolutely shocked when this is like one of the most hardcore first-person platforming experiences I've had in an extremely long time. Not easy. I mean, it has some easy parts to it, and it also does have some difficulty options. But like this was a nail biter for me. If I could take my hand off of the controller, or in my case, mouse, to bite the nails, which I wasn't able to do because you really have to claw grip your gaming device the entire time to stay clinging to this mountain. It's not easy.
I was bouncing all over these rocks because I was trying to, I did play Descent last year, and which was a climbing game that had quite different controls. But this one you are grabbing and then kind of jumping and hitting the next one. It is a very a frog climbing experience. Like, it's not like a normal human climbing where you put your hand on the thing and then move to the next and move to the next. This one you are literally frog jumping between rocks, and so it is a much harder one, and for me also made me feel quite queasy because I got very jostly the way I was playing it. So your mileage may vary. There is a demo, but for me, the difficulty and me being bad at it made me feel sick. So I think it was really cute. I just felt sick playing it. So your mileage may vary.
It's a weird one for our show because like I pulled it up. I really liked this, like, a lot. I have not finished it yet. It's actually kind of on the long side. I think some estimates put it around 10 hours. I played about 3.5 hours, and I was more than halfway done, but that's as much as I had time for this week. So I was really enjoying it, but I haven't, like, fully explored the story. There's not a ton of story to this game, but it does have one. So not, I haven't completed it. But
as far as
I
can
really
tell,
liked
the story is climb each mountain and put a little radio on top of them.
There's this whole sort of framing around that, like the company sends you out to this area to like complete a job that your father, who seems to have disappeared, started long before you. He was some kind of an inventor. He created these, radio towers or something that you're supposed to be putting on top of all of the peaks in this valley. And then there's all these little like Polaroids that you can find throughout the little miniature open world of the valley that will like give you little peeks at your your history with your father. But I don't know enough about that to really talk about the story. It's very optional. Like, you don't have to care about the story with the frog dad. This is really a game about like the physical act of climbing these little mountains.
This is where it's kind of interesting to me because first-person platformers are very contentious. I think they're very wise to have a demo for this game. I think many people are, myself included, are very skeptical when it comes to first-person platformers. Just I think most of the times where games that are first-person try to do platforming, they stumble in a lot of big ways. Like, it's really, I think the last time we did one that was in that kind of genre was, I think we covered Neon White. Did we?
We have not.
Okay. We thought about playing it for the show, and I think it was divisive.
Yeah, I didn't want to play it, honestly.
I think we didn't cover it because it was so divisive. There are a lot of games that have taken different stabs at this. There are very few that are like, generally critically acclaimed. And there are even fewer games that have worked for me. This game was pretty good. Like, this actually has a really accessible, good platforming element. I think part of it is the fact that it's a little bit maybe more of a climbing than platforming game.
Yeah.
But the thing about like games that are 3D platformers, when you say, hey, I'm interested in first-person platforming, the game that always gets brought up is, I bet you know the one I'm thinking of, Mirror's Edge.
I was gonna say Mirror's Edge.
Oh, because I was trying to remember the name of that PlayStation 1 game where you play as a rabbit.
I was like, it's Mirror's Edge, right?
Jumping
Flash.
Flash.
I would say I would compare this kind of to Jumping Flash. Yeah, aesthetically, this is leaning a lot more Jumping Flash than Mirror's Edge, but Mirror's Edge is still like the game that most people who are like, hey, 3D platforming can work, they'll like point to that and say like, hey, look, there was a game in 2008 that was very popular.
That many but not everyone liked.
Yeah.
And Mirror's Edge, I think it's kind of mid, frankly, and maybe folks will like roast me for that opinion, but like
I liked it. I didn't finish it, but I liked it.
My theory on 3D platforming is it generally doesn't work in a game that's trying to do almost anything else, right? Like if you have a game like, or at least for me, I adore the Dishonored series. It gives you a great platforming ability with that like blink where you can do the teleport.
Incredible.
It's super fun. The jumps are great, but it gives you every motivation to want to do the platforming. Because you can avoid combat by doing the cool platforming challenges, and yet it's still like is super frustrating to me when I get into the more hardcore platforming segments in a game that I otherwise, in total adore, a series that I love.
We are still talking real big circles around the game, and I do want to take a second to talk about the actual mechanics here. This is a climbing game, but like it's not like other games. Like we talked about Jusant, and like Jusant is like it's climbing mechanics are there, but it's like it's almost like edging more towards a walking sim. Whereas this game is like very kind of like very interested in like where do you put your hands. So I'm talking about this on a mouse and keyboard. Obviously, it'll be a little different for a controller, but on a mouse and keyboard, first person mouse look. And left button and right button on your mouse control your left and right hands, which are very funny visually. They are kind of like almost like frog tongue arms, like
nubbins.
Yeah, little like black arm lines with a little grabby at the end.
You know what it reminded me of? Those like you used to get out of a quarter machine at like the grocery store. The like little sticky man,
slappy hands.
Yeah,
yes,
they're like slappy hands. Or they the thing I really was flashing back to is they had little sticky man guys that had like little gummy hands but were like a plastic body, and you'd throw them at a wall and they'd like flip flop their way down.
Those were great. Where do you get those now? I need to get them.
I don't know.
Except I don't allow my children to stick those sticky hand things to the walls in my house.
Because they cause oil stains.
Exactly. So if I brought those in and I was playing with them, I would be a massive hypocrite. So
glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceilings will never get out. At least the ones we had when we were kids.
I have all of those things in my house, and I just am prepared to repaint. When
same.
Shane prioritizes
their
joy.
dreams. Yes.
We put the stars up. We went to a Bluey themed birthday party, and they gave out the stars because apparently those are featured in an episode of Bluey that I don't remember getting to.
Okay.
And my kids, of course, insisted. They got them in their party favors, insisted on putting them up, and my wife just stared at me like, "Are you gonna let them do that?" And I was like, I'll go get the ladder.
Listeners, Raygan and I have a very different approaches to like housekeeping in general. Raygan is like a shoes off house, and I am a like vacuum occasionally house.
Which one of us is right? I think we know.
No, it's not going to astound anyone that I let my kids stick stuff to the walls.
But back to the game.
Right, I was saying, let's talk about the mechanics. Here we are again, circling the globe. So the sticky grabby hands. The thing about it is that what I think is really, really interesting about this is that you first of all, you have to hold the button down in order to continue to grab. This is not a click and you grab. It is click and hold, and your right hand continues to hold. Let go of your right mouse button, and your right hand will let go. But as long as you have one point of contact on the wall, you have essentially full 3D movement on a tether. It's like your arm is this like fixed length tether to the wall, and you can move full 6 degrees of freedom around it within the spherical radius of your tether. No climber has ever achieved this. It's like it's very silly. But like, imagine that you can stick your arm out, grab onto a wall, and then one-handed spin yourself around in any direction and at absolutely any angle. And so that's the kind of freedom that you have here. And what most of the climbing involves is like, grab something, spin your body to be close enough to the next spot, and either grab it and let go with the first hand, or maybe you're not quite close enough and you have to do some kind of maneuver like a jump in order to make it to that next spot and grab on as soon as you can.
Maybe this is why it has to be first person, because imagining what that would actually look like in third person is ridiculous.
It would look so silly.
Like those broken VR games that you see in the really rip-off places. Yeah, and I think that was part of maybe it was just the freedom of movement, because the whole perspective was moving so much. Maybe that's why I was having vestibular issues. But it was really cool to like have that freedom of motion, and I can see how if like the mechanic is a good one, it also made things weird for me. So I have trouble like saying, but like it was very unique and interesting, and I liked doing it.
Have either of y'all played Gorilla Tag?
No.
Like with a gorilla?
Gorilla Tag is a VR game that is really popular with kids that have VR headsets. I mean, like small kids. It is tag, but each kid is a gorilla because it's VR, no legs. So you run by sticking your hands down and doing this. Listeners, this is an audio podcast.
Yeah. Shane is making a gesture at his sides, arms running. Looks a bit like I was gonna describe it in a way that would have been too crude for a podcast.
Thanks
you can envision it.
Right. So, but it's a climbing game, and it's in some ways pretty similar to this, but with your actual, arms, your virtual ape arms. And I hadn't really thought about these two games being similar, but the more I think about it, actually, they're remarkably similar, except for you're not going to get shouted at by a 12-year-old.
Hey, that's an improvement.
Depends on the 12-year-old, and you could get shouted at by a 12-year-old while playing this if you arrange things correctly.
Yeah, I suppose so.
A couple other things about this mechanically. There are a bunch of gadgets that you get unlocked. So in the valley, there are 11 peaks, 11 mountains that you can climb. Each of those has 3 different routes up it. There's like an easy, medium, and hard route up each of the mountains. Each mountain kind of has like a theme in terms of like a particular mechanic. So like, they start out all pretty similar and easy and basic, but like eventually you'll be getting to mountains where it's like, oh, this is a 4-star mountain or a 5-star mountain. And they'll have different stuff. Like this one has weird little moving carts that you have to grab onto and that will pull you along on the mountain, that kind of thing. They'll add on additional mechanics. And each time you complete a mountain, which means you have to climb all 3 of its routes. And by the way, each route has these little posts, these little like logs sticking out of the mountain, and you have to touch the logs in order. This is its way of making sure you don't just, glitch your way to the top or something. The way that it tells you've completed a route is you have to touch like 4 or 5 of these little logs along the way. And once you've done that for all 3 of the routes on a particular mountain, you get stamps on a card, and you take that back to a weird little froggy camp guy who works for the climbing club, and he will reward you by giving you something, usually a gadget that you can use to, enhance your climbing. And the gadgets are interesting. So obviously, you start with the basic stuff of like, okay, I can grab onto things and I have a map. And then you start unlocking. The first one that you unlock is probably the most important, and that is a wristwatch that lets you pause time very briefly. You can upgrade it later, but that's very useful if you're like, in a difficult moment. You can sort of pause time, maybe to like look around, get your angle right while you're in midair. And it also gives you an extra jump. So you get a midair jump. By pausing time. So if you were like, trying to so you basically get a double jump or like a jump and like reorient yourself and jump again. Really, really powerful. And some of the early mountains you can do totally without that. I think some of the later ones, I think it's pretty non-optional to be able to use that mechanic. And then you get other options, other stuff too. There's a sledge that you can use to slide down hills. There's a hang glider that you can use to sort of fly down once you're on top of the mountains. Those aren't super mechanically important for climbing, but they are fun to use. And it continues to reward you with that stuff. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, but some of those gadgets do really help, with the mechanics there.
I am so glad you said that there is a hang glider. I didn't get that far to unlock the hang glider, but my absolute first thought when I got to the top of the very first mountain was, where's my hang glider? I need a hang glider.
Yeah, I want to jump. I want to short hike off this. I want to fly, baby.
My biggest irritation with the hang glider is that when you first get it, so all of these items can be upgraded, and when you first get the hang glider, it doesn't have enough gas in the hang glider.
Oh, it's like Zelda Breath of the Wild, where the first time you get the hang glider, it lasts for like 13 seconds.
At first. And you fall. It's so dispiriting. I was like, man, this hang glider sucks. Screw this. I don't know why. Like that one in particular. Like the other ones, the fact that they have a gas meter essentially to them makes perfect sense. But come on, man. What is it? Come on, man. I can even glide all the way to the ground. Come on. But yeah, overall, I think mechanics-wise, this was super fun. I know not everybody felt this way, and fair enough. It sounds like it's it's the sort of divisive set of mechanics. For me, the midair hanginess of it, the hold on with one finger really tight while I was getting stressed out playing this game. My fingers were getting tired from gripping the left and right mouse buttons, and getting to the top of some of these mountains, I was fist bumping. It was great. So I really liked this mechanically, but like I said, obviously it sounds like that wasn't a universal thing. So tell me about the problems you guys had with it.
Knowing what to do mechanically made sense, but I think the bounciness combined with the graphics are really lovely in a simplified way, but something about the bridge between the textures and the cross hatching and the outlines while I was swinging and the camera was moving made me feel very disoriented and nauseous. To the point that when I got to the top of the first mountain, I was like, okay, I'm going to stop for a while because maybe I have COVID. And I went and took a COVID test. Because I thought,
Laura.
Well, I was like, I honestly, I had had some sniffles. I've had long-term allergies. I thought, oh, maybe I don't normally react to games this way. Maybe I'm sick. And then an hour later, I was fine. And I was like, could it have been the game? I was like, no, maybe I'm getting sick. I just really felt queasy with the motion, and I think the world was defined but not super defined, and I felt and I was swinging a lot with the way the mechanics are designed, and it's all first person. So
I wonder what you mean when you talk about swinging. For me,
the bouncing, the bouncing between
felt very
rocks.
Controlled. So I grab onto something, and then it was almost just gliding in 3 dimensions. It didn't feel swingy to me. So I'm surprised you said that. Although I don't know.
I think bouncy is a better word for it. But I think when I was grabbing between the rocks and jumping, the world kind of whoom between the rocks. Mm-hmm. The way that it kind of moved and stopped and kind of resolved when you landed on a rock, that kind of bounce back, really did a number on me.
It's interesting. I have a new understanding, I think, for the sort of motion sickness angle on video games, because we talked about this on the Doom episode. Right. I never really had that before. I've had it with VR. VR, I get
very
sick
seldom
very
happens
quickly.
to me. Yeah.
But I never had that with a flat screen.
I've had it happen in VR though. So yeah.
So strange. But then I played Doom in 140 frames per second at on a 27-inch monitor, and suddenly I wanted to throw up immediately as soon as I moved. Yeah. So strange. Huh. It's so weird how this affects different people different ways.
And it wasn't immediate. It was a slow build up, and then I was like, oh, I feel awful. Someone else online, another reviewer, had a similar issue where they said headaches and queasy. So I do think it is very unlikely will happen to you, but there is a demo, so try it and see if you have that issue. If you don't, I think it's probably a really cute game. Every sign pointed to me loving it if I didn't feel like I was ill.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I didn't have the motion sickness issue with the game, but I did download the demo and fire that up. I played this one on my Steam Deck. Raygan, I'm guessing you played this on the PC.
Mm-hmm.
because I was very surprised by how many performance issues I ended up having. I'm kind of thinking that Laura, I know you played it on the Switch.
No, the Switch wasn't available. I played on PC and Parallels, and then I also futzed with the controls the second time I played to bring down the bring down everything in case it was a performance issue.
I had a lot of like performance issues running it on the Steam Deck, which I was surprised at for a game that seems very simple, although I guess it does have a very large open world, which might be contributing. But I had a lot of frame rate issues that made the game a little bit less enjoyable than I think it would have been. I had to turn almost all of the settings almost all of the way down, and there's not a lot of options for it in terms of graphics. I think it's a little bit related to the visual style of it, which I do like. It's got a very cool color palette and all of that. But that partially held me back from like fully engaging with it.
Yeah, I didn't play on Steam Deck, and it does seem like, for me, I think this doesn't seem like a gamepad or handheld game for me. Like, I think it probably could be done, but I felt fatigue with a mouse, this game involves so much like holding down of things, you know what I mean? Like, you have to continually hold the in my case mouse button in order to not fall off the mountain, which means that you are tensing those hand muscles constantly. And
I thought that the Switch size of the screen and the format would help me with the motion sickness, but unfortunately it's not available yet on Switch.
Yeah, it's definitely coming to Switch. They've like a trailer and everything with, so that's definitely going to happen. But yeah, I wonder if it is a performance issue thing. Like this is an interesting one in that you've mentioned they've got like this cross hatching. It's subtle but like really interesting looking. If you look closely at any screen in this game, like they're doing different stuff where like they're kind of showing things like depth with different shaders that mostly are sort of like flat colors with different styles of like lightly colored cross hatching on them, and it's pretty cool looking.
Yeah, I think that might be one of the things that was triggering me, because the way they blur the cross hatch might have been something. I don't know what cued it, but that I had the thought that I tried to turn down that setting, but I couldn't see how.
It has a ton of really attractive like visual touches that are like different ways of creatively using shaders. Like one example that I really liked was in places where you kind of reach where it's like, hey, go back, you're trying to walk out into the middle of nowhere, walk back towards the mountain, dummy. A lot of games will just have like an invisible wall or something like that, or a shark that eats you, I don't know. But this game, like, it as you start to walk out of the like recommended area, the world just gets more and more pixelated. It like applies this like progressive pixel filter over everything. I don't know, I've never seen that done. It was surprisingly effective. Yeah, there's just so many little... That one is like very in your face because it kind of has to be. But there's a ton of really subtle things. Like, every texture seems to have a little bit of movement to it.
Yeah, Laura, I was just looking at a couple of reviews, and I immediately found one from some place called comfycozygaming.com that clearly shared your same issues. It says, Valley Peaks is great on paper and even performs in practice, but the art style that made it so charming reared back on me and snapped hard. Every time I open this game, I get a pretty bad headache.
Yeah,
it's really surprising.
Yeah. I was also surprised because I remember when Nate talked about his problems playing Observation. I was like, oh, that sucks for you, dude. I don't get dizzy playing video games. But turns out you never know what games will have effects on you.
Yeah, it's very strange. Like, I definitely agree. Like, when Nate talked about that, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. You can just say you didn't like the game. You don't have to make up a whole story, dude. You don't have to lie to me. I know you suck at video games. Whatever, man.
Get good, man.
But like, honestly, like it was hard to like wrap my head around what he was running into there. And similarly, like Laura, like I didn't have any problems with this.
Yeah.
I don't believe you're lying to me, but on some level it's like I don't get it. Like it seems fine. But that's the thing with brains. They're weird, They
are weird.
Mm-hmm. And I think these kinds of weird things only ever rear their head in 3D games where you're moving around a lot. I'm kind of back on the subject of 3D platformers, like,
and first person.
This is first person platformers have this aspect that it's like, hey, you know, you, the player, and like you're often playing these on a nice big monitor that takes up a lot of your view, and you know, you're flipping and flopping around. I loved playing Ghost Runner, but I remember that not everyone on the podcast loved Ghost Runner the way that I loved Ghost Runner, and that was a full-on 3D platformer too. So
yeah, I think the thing that's always been a problem for me in 3D platformers, first-person 3D platformers before, is that, you know, so much of a platformer is knowing where you're landing and being able to see the arc and see your feet. And in first person, you can't see either of those things. But this game actually, like, it short circuits some of that because you don't need feet for this game.
No.
You're not climbing with your feet. So for me, that was like a big pro. It like totally worked in that way. But like, yeah, other issues arose for other folks.
Raygan, I'd love to hear more about what I missed because I really wanted to play more of this game. I just couldn't. So tell me more about the cute stuff that is ahead of me.
Yeah,
if I ever can play this.
So there's a few things about this that are really surprising and kind of strange. One is the it has an open world. You know, you start off in this. It all takes place in this valley, I guess, and it's surrounded by unclimbable mountains. You're just looking at the climbable ones. None of them look all that tall, by the way. Like it's kind of a weird thing with perspective. Once you're right up against them, it's kind of a lot. But none of the climbs from bottom to top take, unless you're falling off constantly, take more than like 15 minutes max. So the mountains, objectively, they're not that tall. We're talking about like scale wise, they seem kind of like, a very tall building, not like a literal mountain, right? But you're in this valley full of these little like rock things to climb, lots of frogs hanging around, and every frog has a little something to say. I think a lot of people have compared this to, part of the reason that I played this was some folks specifically compared this to a short hike, and I don't see it. It's not really quite the same. Although, I mean, there's obviously some similarities I see aesthetically and some other reasons. But this is not a first-person short hike. All the frogs have like one line to say. Some of them are very cute and funny. They want to tell you something about your dad who came before you, or they are complaining about ice cream or whatever the frogs are complaining about. But that didn't do much for me. They were all fine. I talked to the frogs if I came near them, but it all felt a little myriad
collectibles everywhere. There's
lots of collectibles. Little stuff. There's mushrooms growing all over the place, and those are a currency that you can use to buy fully stamped cards. So like if you don't want to climb all of the mountains and you want to unlock all of the gadgets more quickly, if you collect a bunch of the golden mushrooms, you can trade them in and get gadgets more quickly, and that is helpful. Maybe you need those gadgets a little earlier in your arc or whatever. And there's also like these nuts and bolts that you collect, which you can use eventually to repair these machines out in the world, and the machines do things like upgrade your items, or they are little traversal things. So maybe there's like a zip line to get you up to a high point or something like that. So story-wise, it's no great shakes. Open world-wise, mostly what I appreciated about it is that it does give you the option to choose to climb the mountains in any order, but it also explicitly tells you which mountains are easy for you and which ones are hard for you. So like as you walk up to a mountain, there'll be like an on-screen prompt that says, this mountain looks mildly challenging, or something like that. You can also look on the map, and the mountains have a 1 to 5 star ranking for how difficult they are. So is this going to be impossible for me early on?
Very ski slope coded.
Exactly. So it's really, for me, nothing about this game really hit except the climbing. Like the frogs are cute visually, and I do love the art style. Just looking out at the landscape, it looks cool. I love what they were doing with shaders. The color scheme is great, but like I wasn't like every frog that gave me some quest to like go and deliver a letter for them or find their flashlight or whatever it was, like I didn't care. I wasn't going to do that. Like I'm not interested, and that seems to be fine. Like this game isn't like gating access to like important stuff based on running fetch quests for frogs, but that stuff is there and feels very extraneous to me. Like I don't know if I would have preferred this game with fewer frogs, but like I didn't care about the frogs. But maybe that's just me. Nothing about it was so cute that I like cared about. Like none of these frogs are characters to me. They all have names. All of them have names. All of them are like individually modeled, but they're all so boring. So I didn't really think that was very good.
Man, don't let the developers hear you say that, because like their dev page describes them as two Scots who are passionate about frogs. Yeah. We're excited for players to hop in and embrace the froggy lifestyle because, let's face it, life's too short to not be a frog.
Okay. I personally, like, I would rather these characters be frogs than not frogs. Like, frogs are good. That's great. But yeah, it's like I could kind of take or leave literally everything except the climbing in this game. If they'd made this like a menu select, climb this mountain, then this mountain, then this mountain, it would have been 10% worse for me. Like, that's about it. So yeah, that's what it is to me. So anyway, I don't know what else there is to say about this one though, especially since you guys did not have quite such a great time with it.
We get it that you hate frogs. That's fine.
Yeah, I actually love frogs. You know, we've so I moved to this. I live in the suburbs, right? I live in you know, the north of Houston, near a forest, state forest, like a protected forest, and I lived all my life almost before, you know, apart from 10 years of moving around, in Houston, Texas, and had only ever seen toads. And then I moved out here, and on multiple occasions, bright green tree frogs have come and just like hung out on my front door. And it's magical. I love them. And I'm like thinking about like, is there anything I can do to summon more of these frogs? Like, what do I need to do for these beautiful boys? Like, what do I need to do to attract them to my home? If anybody has any tips on how to attract small green tree frogs to live and celebrate their frogginess among you, like, that is what I want. Please tell me how. So far, it's just only ever happened like a couple days, or, you know, a day after a rain, and they just like happen to be around, like 3 occasions in like multiple years. If you know the trick, what is the summoning circle I have to lay down to bring these guys back? Like,
and then care for them.
Yes, I do like frogs. When I was a kid, I really desperately wanted to get a Pac-Man frog as a pet. They're a thing. Have you ever seen those guys?
They're so freaky looking.
No, but we did have the bowl of the little swimming frogs that we had to defrost bloodworms to feed them, and it was really hardcore.
No, you have to explain what? A bowl of swimming frogs?
Like a little tiny frogs and like a little fish tank.
Oh. Okay, like you collected tadpoles someplace, and
I don't know. They were my brothers, but occasionally I had to feed them.
Interesting.
We did a thing frozen where we, like, bloodworms.
Was this like a pet shop purchase, or just like a wild?
I think it was a pet shop purchase. They're little dwarf frogs, I think. And then they're little frogs in an aquarium, so they're much more aquatic.
Yeah, I mean,
but yeah, you feed them frozen bloodworms, which is just sounds so metal.
Yeah, I love frogs, so, you know, bring it on. But like, these guys in this game, you know, they're fine. They're fine. They're froggy enough. They're fine. No tongues sticking out. No, you know, the arms in this. Why didn't they do tongues? It should have been tongues. Although
because you don't have two of them.
Yeah.
That would be much more horrifying.
That'd be really weird.
A quick Google apparently says you couldn't only feed frogs frozen bloodworms for digestive reasons. Just don't email me. I was a child.
We don't know how to take care of frogs.
Well, I don't know how to take care of frogs.
This is what I'm saying.
From when
Tell
I was
me how
6.
to take care of frogs. Tell me how to invite them in. Summon the frogs. So
we've got a Halloween bowl full of frozen bloodworms, and I think you're good.
That's the thing to do. We have a couple more minutes here, so let's. Oh yeah, sorry. Quick thing. Game is available on Steam. It's $20, I think, unless I'm wrong. Looks like I was wrong. 15. 15 on Steam, also coming to Switch. I would recommend it, like, strongly, but then again, maybe check the demo, as Laura was saying, because this is one that seems like it might work for some and not for others. But if you're interested, I think, give it a try. The demo is pretty good demo, pretty, like, meaty demo, really introduces the mechanics, and then you can get into this, and I have had, like, again, I haven't finished it, but I probably will, because I've been really, really enjoying it. Do we have some time for what's making us happy? Laura, what's been making you happy this week?
Well, we have been kind of hosting double feature hangouts at our house for making our own little film fest. And this weekend we did La Dolce Vita, and it was as our theme, which was it's all summer movies. So this was 2 movies in the summer in Italy. And this meant it was an excuse to like do a full Italian deli platter. We played a bunch of very cheesy, Louis Prima, Dean Martin stuff, all while people were settling in. And we watched Summertime, which is by David Lean, as our matinee. And then the evening was Talented Mr. Ripley. And I got to give a little mini lecture on the costumes of Talented Mr. Ripley. And it made me so happy to just get to pontificate about all the cool costume things in that movie. It was really hard to write because it's the kind of blind where you give more and more details as you go so people can kind of guess the movie if they hadn't seen it. And I really wanted to be like, this is how you fit in on the Italian Riviera if you're a con man, and I couldn't do it. So the whole event was making me very happy, but an excuse to rewatch Talented Mr. Ripley, which I hadn't seen in, 10, 12 years, and then also get to kind of do some costume design research why would I do that? Like, why would I have done that for any reason except I wanted to do it to introduce the movie to my friends.
I think I may have never seen this movie. This is one of the movies that was like, if you ask me, have you seen The Talented Mr. Ripley? I would say probably, but like I'm looking this up right now and realizing, nope.
You're like, no, I haven't. And
definitely haven't.
It's a extraordinarily good movie, and if you want my costume design introduction, anybody, I'll email it to you. It doesn't spoil the movie very carefully because my husband hadn't seen it. He doesn't even know the major incidents in the movie, totally blind on the Ripley story. So he just kind of knew it was in Italy, and I told him it was good and should be the evening show. So totally spoiler free. Highly recommend the movie if you haven't seen it. I will say... Is
this on streaming anywhere that's like easily accessible for folks?
It was on Max. I don't know if it still is.
I'll have to like do some searching because
I had a Blu-ray from back in the day that we burned, but it's got, in addition to the most beautiful Jude Law's, like anyone's ever looked on a movie, is Jude Law in this movie. Matt Damon's the lead. Gwyneth Paltrow's in it. Kate Blanchett, Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, like, I was gonna say, I looked at this and I was like, oh well, like 90s, like late 90s Philip Seymour Hoffman, like, probably height of his powers. Like, I'd love to see that.
He is perfect in a small part. He has every single line he makes count, like to the point that you can almost get every line he speaks as a clip on YouTube from people who love the movie because he's that good at those little.
What a loss! I'm such a massive fan of his. I'm such a loss. Like every time I think about him, it makes me sad. I've lost.
This is maybe my favorite like small dose one where he's wonderful in Boogie Nights, but I think he's a bigger character. This one, he immediately comes on and is like, you are sus, I see you. I am going to be very weird about it in a way that makes you know that I know what you're doing, and it's perfect. I think if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a good time.
Awesome.
And gorgeous shots of Italy. It'll make you want to go to Italy immediately.
I am going to, at the risk of repeating myself, which I'm literally repeating myself now because listeners, you may not be aware, we had a lost episode a couple of weeks ago. We recorded an entire episode that we had audio issues recording issues that were so severe that we ended up having to re-record. That was the Thank Goodness You're Here episode. And
I don't know what you're talking about, and it wasn't my fault.
I was not blaming
also
anyone.
Mine. My air conditioner is very loud.
There were a lot of issues on that episode, and some of them technical, and some of them were Shane. But I'm joking, it was fine, no big deal. But on that episode, we did a What's Making Me Happy that is now totally lost, and so I'm going to repeat it. So, listeners, this not important for you. For Laura, Shane, forgive me. But I wanted to talk about this thing. Way back a while ago, I already mentioned that like I've kind of rethought my whole approach to reading over the last little while. For years, I was like pretty much an audiobook only guy. And I bought an e-reader, rebought. I had a Kindle, but I bought a new one and rethought my whole process. I've been doing a lot more reading. And I'd been really interested in this device called the Books Palma. You probably have seen some stuff about it, a lot of influencery stuff. The Books Palma is a sort of a handheld phone-sized e-reader, e-ink screen, black and white, the whole e-ink deal, but it runs Android, and it is like something you can stick in your pocket in the same way you can a phone. And that seemed really interesting to me, but it's also almost $300. And that was just too expensive for me to like blow on something that I was like not 100% sure where exactly it would fit into my life, or whether it would be what I want. But I did some reading and found out about a very similar but way cheaper device that I have bought and I've been really loving, called the Moaan Inkpalm Plus. So Xiaomi brand, a Chinese brand of smartphones and everything else. They're like a massive corporation in China, has this sub-brand called Moaan where they make e-readers, and the Inkpalm Plus is a phone-sized e-reader. I'm holding it up to the screen. Doesn't make any sense to listeners. This thing is physically about the exact same size as some of the largest iPhones. So like an iPhone 15 Pro Max, like same physical dimensions basically, except thinner than any iPhone that I know of. And, obviously a e-ink screen, nothing else. So no speaker, can't make any sounds whatsoever. It doesn't make phone calls. It's not a phone. It has Wi-Fi and runs Android 11, older version of Android, but it's about as stripped down as a sort of Android device can get, including the fact that it has black and white only e-ink screen. But it's kind of been amazing because it's an e-reader device that I can stick into my pocket with my phone and barely notice that it's there. So it's like something that I can literally carry around all the time. And when I go to reach, part of the whole reason that I've been trying to change up my whole approach to reading is that I've been trying to pick up my phone less and just like be more mindful about like spending time less on things with like infinite scrolls and more on things that might feel a little bit more like I can engage and grow and read and whatnot. Even if what I'm reading is like not exactly highbrow all the time, I do feel like that's a better use of my time, and I'm like less likely to fall into like, holes of endless scrolling on Reddit or whatever. So having a different device in my pocket that is the size of a phone that I can pull out instead of a phone and does almost nothing except read books has actually been like really great for me. I've been really liking that as a thing. So there are weird compromises with this device. A couple things. You can only buy it directly from China on AliExpress. It costs $120, depending on which seller you buy it from. I've seen it as high as $140, depends on like what day you go and log on to AliExpress. And it has some weird software issues, all of which you can work around if you don't mind being a little bit of a tinkerer. But you can install the Kindle app on it. You can install like Barnes & Noble or Kobo app on it and read books from those stores. Or you can install your own, whatever e-reader app you like and load EPUB files onto it. And if you really want, you can also install like a web browser and read web pages on it, although the experience is not going to be great because, again, e-ink screen, slow refresh. But for me, just loading EPUB files on the thing and reading them has been great. And so I just wanted to throw it out there. If anybody, has any questions about it, whatever, I'm happy to answer them. But
does it run Libby?
It does. You can totally install Libby on it. But the Libby app isn't super great on e-ink screens because unless I've missed something, you can't easily set Libby to, I think you can set Libby to turn pages. It has buttons on the side, like volume buttons on a smartphone, which you can use as page turn buttons, which is a really nice thing. I like holding it one-handed and turning pages with my thumb. You can do that with the Libby app, but I don't think you can turn off animations, like page turn animations in the Libby app. So I think you're probably better off. I think you can still do the thing where you send Libby books to the Kindle app, and that works great. The Kindle app is pretty nice on it. So that's what I would recommend if you're doing that. Anyway, not much else to say other than that, like, I think actually phone-sized e-readers are actually definitely a good thing. If you have the money to burn, probably the Books Palma is a better experience. But like, if you want to dip your toe into that, this costs like only like slightly more than the very cheapest Kindle. And I've been getting a really great experience with it. So there you go. Shane, what's making you happy this week?
Well, I have a kids book recommendation this week, and I would recommend it to anyone. Kids of almost any age, if they'll still sit still for a picture book, will love Gladys the Magic Chicken.
What a title.
Gladys the Magic Chicken is a book by the author Adam Rubin, who's the same guy who wrote Dragons Love Tacos, which I did very much enjoy in my house. I think this is the superior book. I think this is fantastic. Gladys the Magic Chicken is a story that takes place in ancient times, and it is the story of a chicken who may or may not be magic, but who is kind of passed from hand to hand. Anyone that comes into contact with Gladys the magic chicken will have their wishes come true. So it's just a story of repeatedly this chicken going from person to person and people making wishes and having all their wishes come true, kind of through happenstance. But the chicken does do a really nice dance whenever it's fed, and that's also a great mark in Gladys's favor. The book is very well written. It's very funny. It has a little bit of a Gary Larson vibe to it. But on top of that, the art is just downright gorgeous. Everything is painted with this kind of beautiful, heightened, super vibrant color scheme, but like right in the sort of space between realism and cartooniness. It's a very, very beautiful book. I really can't I don't have that much to say about it, except that if you have a kid in your life, you should get them Gladys the Magic Chicken. But yeah, beautiful book, very highly recommended.
I love a good children's picture book recommendation. Yeah, my approach with picture books is like we just go to the library and like I pretty much randomly grab the first 12 things that don't look like garbage, and then go back again in a week to 2 weeks and get another 12. And sometimes they are just wonderful, and sometimes they are just awful. But it's really interesting, becoming a parent and reading so many of these things. Two Children has made me aware of children's picture books as an art form that's kind of a unique thing. I think anybody
beautiful poetry too. Yeah. A good children's picture book is like a poem with beautiful pictures. And I'm the same way. I have to bring a lot of kids' books through the filter to find the ones that I like. What I do is, I mentioned Libby earlier. Libby is fantastic for kids' books if you're doing it on a tablet that has a nice big color screen, because for two reasons. One, there's, at least with my library or libraries that I have access to, there's a huge catalog, especially of kids' books, and you can get, I can do 2 or 3 brand new kids' books a night through the Libby app. But also, there is a huge collection of kids' books that have a read-along feature, and you can search for those specifically. Gladys the Magic Chicken was one such that I found because it had a read-along. And the read-alongs for that are fantastic for early readers because they will highlight. So you have a professional narrator, and it is highlighting the words as they are spoken by the narrator, which I think is a great way to help kids with their reading. So, on top of that, you can, flip between the pages or tap on a word to go right to where you want it to. And I was very surprised with this feature because, even on Gladys the Magic Chicken, where text is kind of all over the place, including on little, anytime a character speaks, it's on an old-fashioned scroll that kind of appears in the artwork. And even that is being lit up just perfectly. So this is a low-key, what's making me happy is the Libby app, but I've talked about the Libby app before. This is something about the Libby app I haven't discussed. And I have, by the way, Raygan, I have bought, when I find a children's book on Libby that I really like, I'll usually buy a few copies of it. And so, the last time I did this was The Skull, which I sent your kids' way.
You did send us that. Such a great one, man. That's a perfect example of a kid's book as actually a little object of art. I think almost anyone picking up The Skull would it's haunting. It's a wonderful book.
And it's fantastic. So I've done the same with Gladys the Magic Chicken. I have a second copy of it ready for your kids. So
awesome. Thank you.
That's perfect. I have a friend at work who every year for Christmas, whatever was the best book she read in the last year, she just gifts it to all of her friends as an additional Christmas gift in addition to whatever she was planning on giving them that is custom. She says it is sad that she doesn't get to talk about her favorite book with other people, so it is forcing. But it is. She's like, it's just as much a gift for me as it is for you.
Does that work? Because I've observed that
does.
recommending a book is no death sentence for a book like recommending it to a friend.
A lot of her friends are like content strategists and librarians, so your mileage may vary, but it works for her. When she reads a book she loves, generally her bookish friends read it. But I briefly got heralded by Goodreads for finishing my reading challenge early, and then I found out there was a bug and they double counted 8 books. So
oh no.
I'm fine. I'm on pace. I just all the confetti was flying around the site, and then I realized it was a bug. And they thought I had read books twice in a row immediately after I put them in. So I cleared them out.
Laura, I don't think we're Goodread friends or whatever you call it on Goodreads.
Yeah, y'all should add me on Goodreads.
We should get connected because
I don't review anything, but everything I read is logged. So that's...
You don't even do a star rating?
I don't even do a star rating.
Oh, that is odd.
If a book
I do that at least.
knocks me out or I hate it, I will give a extreme star rating. But I don't tend to give mids star ratings. There was a book 4 years ago that I gave 5 stars to and wrote one of the best things I've ever read, and I do not remember reading this book. So I clearly, I guess I need to reread it because I'll probably read it and be like, oh, it's this one. But right now I'm like, what was I doing?
My reading challenge, I last year I read a little over 20 books, and that was the total on my reading challenge this year, and I'm at 18 already, and so I think I might need to up my game and increase that number. Anyway, listeners, if you want to be my friend on Goodreads, or if you...
I've read 44.
Holy Laura, god damn it. If you, listener, want to connect with us about any of the myriad things we've discussed on this episode that was nominally about the game Valley Peaks, you can find us on the internet at shortgame.fm. Shortgame.fm is the website where you can find all the links and buttons to all of our socials. I actually need to update that because I've changed my Mastodon, and I'm actually a little more active on Blue Sky than I was on Mastodon. Anyway, long story short, most of the links are there. Theoretically, they're up to date. By the time you check this, hopefully I'll have updated them. Go check out shortgame.fm, all of our socials. Also, link to our Patreon. Did you know this is a Patreon-supported podcast? Patreon's been in the news this week because they are in a bit of a dispute with Apple because Apple is requiring Patreon to use their in-app purchase system for subscriptions that are made through the Patreon iOS app. I'm mentioning this mainly because I just think anybody who happens to be subscribed to or considering subscribing to a Patreon ought to be aware that this is happening. What this is meaning is that either if you subscribe via the iOS app, either the people that you're subscribing and supporting will be getting 30% less, like 30 cents less on the dollar of every and that's in addition to the 5-ish depending percent that Patreon takes, which, by the way, that means like Apple really thinks that their cut is worth significantly more than what Patreon provides. Like,
it's their standard,
I know it. It's just,
but I know
it's bullshit.
It's still...
Anyway, we won't get into that. But I just do think that anyone who happens to be supporting people on Patreon should be aware, if you happen to own an iPhone and use the Patreon iOS app, that this equation is different if you subscribe via the website. And this means even if you have your payment details set up on your Patreon account, if you do if you hit that subscribe button in the iOS app, then you are screwing yourself and your creator out of a bit of cash. So don't do that. Use the website instead. You can still use the app for all of its other functions. And your creators, including ourselves, have to make a choice. Do we increase our prices?
Or do it. What do I care? Throw your money away.
Well, it's not, because I have to decide. I haven't done so yet. I have to decide by the end of the month. Do we jack up prices for everybody who's using the iOS app? Or not only new subscriptions? Don't worry if you're a current subscriber. Mm-hmm. But do we jack up prices for new subscribers in the iOS app in such a way that they have no way to tell that we're just charging 30% more there? There's no like, hey, go to the website in the app, of course, because they're not allowed to. Or do we keep our prices the same everywhere, but just get less money anytime somebody happens to hit the button in the mobile app? Sucks. Stupid. So thanks, Apple, again, for being... Look, man, I've been using Apple products for my whole life. You'll pry my iPhone from my cold dead hands, but also they've been huge dicks the last anyway, whatever. So you're aware. But you can find all of our stuff at shortgame.fm, links to our Patreon. Why might you do that? You can get access to our Discord community, which is where we talk about the show, plan episodes. We talk about books a lot, surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, considering you just heard that part of the podcast. And also everything else that we talk about. It's just a great place to hang out online. We would love to have you. Everyone who subscribes to our Patreon gets access there immediately, so please join. We love new folks coming into the Discord to tell us about stuff. And it's also the main place that we get recommendations for games. If you want to tell us, hey, you guys should play this game, best way to do it. You can also just contact us via the website. You can get links to all of our socials, all those things. I'm Raygan Kelly.
I'm Lauren Ash.
And I'm Shane Kelly.
And thank you once again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.